The New York Times and Harvard, meaning Barack Obama as the Johnny Cochran of Reagan's national legacy, have long been party to and empowering a secret argument to the effect that American laws are null and void and have no relevance and cannot be evoked for legal behavior. Instead, they are a deception to allow for maniacal fascism. And at the root of this is their claim that nonviolence is against the nature of man. And the claim that nonviolence is against the nature of man goes to the root of a long dissertation pertaining to must be the coffee machine. I hear things when my hearing aids in. I'm not sure where they are. I hope it's not too distracting to follow my remarks. If it is, put on the CC at the bottom of the computer. The idea of nonviolence goes to the root of our national legacy. It cuts through our role as Christian society. It haunts our treatment of Native Americans. It pertains to the legacy of the African American empowerment movement. And it goes to the roots of what we consider lawful protest, for example. A quick dismissal of the claim that nonviolence is not a fundamental rule of law in American society can be seen by the fact that Joe Biden was elected president through the vote. And it probably will not take violence to convince this fascist, corpulent blob to vacate as the laws require, despite being armed to the teeth with maniacs like Michael Flynn. Flynn is a name that I've heard before, although I didn't associate it with a Michael. I'll get to the signifier Flynn, in the course of this talk on nonviolence. But there are certain things pertaining to Jimmy Creary as the Walrus, the joke of the city of Pittsburgh that was played by Warhol and Paul McCartney and collected upon by Yoko Ono and warmongers in the NAACP, in which nonviolence is a catastrophic jest, a planned jest, that is at the root of a hidden history. John Stockwell followed me to Allentown on my birthday when they crashed the stock market in October of 1987. Stock market, you can see the signifiers. And he was promoting the secret war of the CIA, which is, the root Ian Fleming stuff, the Scottish guy laughing at Ann Mitchell, the fact that Mark of the Devil was the only film my father could see in Ecuador when he was there. Hollywood's control of media. But if you look at the history of nonviolence from the way that I was schooled in it, taught to reach out to the soul of the people who were turning over cars and lighting them on fire to protest busing, stuff like that. You see arguments that went on between Adam Clayton Powell and Martin Luther King when he was still alive, and so he was relegated to a place in the NAACP. So many of whom saw his position against the war in Vietnam as a mutiny. Now, it wasn't a mutiny if you get through the double cross of Noam Chomsky's evaluation of JFK and read Strategy for Peace. JFK made very clear that he recognized that the people who were being at risk in Vietnam were Buddhists, that American logic was at risk, that it could only lead to an endless war that we would never get out of without bloody cost to everybody, that it was unjust, that it was rigged to blow, that it shouldn't be done. So it wasn't mutiny. The mutiny was killing him and then tying loyalty of the NAACP, the Civil Rights Act of JFK, giving LBJ credit for it, and then tying black warmongering to, you know, the advances of the civil rights movement. And that's the legacy that the nonviolence movement was saddled with. And of course, King was murdered as a joke, the way that I have tortured, castrated my girlfriend's raped as a joke. And we'll look at who's behind this in a minute. But the logic of nonviolence and the history of nonviolence, it goes through Buddhism, it goes through all attempts to identify who are the psychopaths, and international law is predicated on it. International law has no law enforcement per se. All it has is alienating powers. We can say you are outcast because of your behavior. And most people who want to participate in the international exchange system for anything realize that they have to cooperate to some degree to get what they want in terms of international exchange. So being outcast is no good. International law doesn't usually have a red-headed corpulent weirdo zapping people with machine gun drones. International law is usually sober statesmen saying these people have to be outcast because of their behavior. So law enforcement as a rule is nonviolent, and it practices outcasting, exclusion, if necessary, imprisonment. And nonviolence is the school system, the educational system that teaches people to get along, teaches people to distribute resources properly. Now, in an effort to scuttle all that, they've created a war mentality. The war mentality is meant when we're leading to rations in hospital care right now because of the war mentality. You know, the inability to care about others led to the explosion of the COVID mission, which I believe was planned. If you look at what they did to me, they cheated me of my bachelor's degree. That's very symbolic because they say I'm a cheat to cover for their AIDS experiment. Everybody knows now about the AIDS experiment. So it's illogical to say that they would have me in place for COVID after the AIDS experiment because nothing was there. They planned the whole thing. They say they're justifying it because you have to fight anti-Christian behavior. Well, anti-Christian behavior is violence. It's these fight clubs. But they say no, it's to be a cheat. It leads to abortion. They have this butcher baby cover story about Mount Desert Island, when in reality, they were setting it up so that they imprisoned me in the situation where the only thing that they would allow me to do was perform for them. That was the words that they used. The Carl brothers used to say, you are going to perform for us. And they had a neuroobedience. I was, yes, master. Yes, master. They had an implant where I would seize if I tried to disobey them. So that now legally you would think that would go to court, but the black warmongers say no. They have charity jacked it. They were making sex films that they want to sell to raise money for the victims, and they bring the victims in, right? And they line up tons and tons of victims and say, whose victimization, mine or yours? And they have this Jewish kid calling himself Abdul the terrorist on KDKA. Whose victimization, mine or yours? Whose victimization, mine or yours? And this is their silly fight club, but it's underwriting an atrocity. So, they say the legacy of nonviolence is at risk, and they put up Yoko Ono's Amnesty International, AI, which they then say stands for Eye for an Eye. I magazine comes out. Meaning Midori Goto's going to go along with it. Peter Gabriel will find the ledger of all of Jimmy's activities, and Midori Goto will compensate Donald Trump pimp services escorts, and I will do it. I will do as Simon says. I will do as Simon says, and it's just pussy ball logic in the Two Virgins pussy ball game. So and they break the heart of the queer bait who they say was a cheater. Notice, for example, how they got the neuroplasm to detonate. Obviously, having a lover was helping me resuscitate. And they knew that. They also knew it was dormant during passion. It didn't assert itself. They were claiming it did because I became frightened when it began to suffocate afterwards, when they cut it off. Okay? So they used this shell game, this legerdemain, this trick from the bogus book of Penis Gabriel. But how did they get it to detonate finally? It was through my beautiful fiance, who of course they took away from me, and then they said, "You will fight us or we will rape Jeannie." They raped Jeannie. "You will fight us or we will kill Cersei." They rape and kill Cersei. They deliver the message with the murders of the Kennedys, and then they say, "You're a cheater. Cheaters never win." The Union took a blow for you. The Union didn't take a blow for me. They were hitting both sides and then saying the Union took a blow for you because they want the people who had lined up to say, "We're going to execute this Walrus Jimmy," who's a substitute, a poor substitute for the great John Lennon, who was behind the whole thing. I mean, if you look at the Cameron, they came in with Cameron Brown. The Cameron Brown is Len Gale. If you look it up, you'll see it. It's Len Gale. Gale and Lennon were working together all along. She's a little Nicole. He pulled a Houdini. It was a trick. It was just what you would expect from these lopers. So, we're double dare. Clint Eastwood used to call Regals there. Well, they work together on the whole thing. I mean, he likes to come in with terrorists and put them in themselves. I mean, he wants to bring in the people who tortured me. Oh, look at Jimmy makeup and all this stuff. I mean, this is typical. Like King Crimson, the Court of the Crimson King, King Crimson, Crimson King, King Crimson. It's a linguistic loving. Clint Hill Clinton. That's how they play. That's how you know it's behind it. It's a swastika Stratego board activity. So the final gesture of violence in the matter is, of course, the black warmongers blocking the courts for the charity jackers. Anybody can see that poisoning somebody in the brain, making them a slave, hypnotizing them because they're white, and saying, "Oh, they had sex out of wedlock," is criminally insane. And yet they want the porn movies. They want to sell them. They want to raise money for the victims. The victims say, "If you don't, they poison me in the mouth," okay? And this is the sort of activity that they're up to. Now, Billy Flynn was faster than everybody. Flynn was also the name of the construction company that wove the school van around the school bus. All of these people were working for the people who ran the operation of the school bus. Not the school buses, when they killed my father and stuff, led by Migna Wen, and these people from like Star Trek, like George Takei with Reagan. These are the people at Carnegie Mellon University who set the whole thing up, who blasted like terroristic horrors, things I won't show you because they're too sickening. I will show them once to the police if they ever agree to look into it. I have them wrapped up. I'm not going to look at it. It was the first issue of Soldier of Fortune, saying hideous things to the mind of the hostage child. Okay, get this. They did this to a child. And these NAACP warmongers want to dismiss that. It's just a provincial norm. Okay, but they impact it and then they suck it out with Jaime Carbonell. I mean, what's a little love between friends? I mean, these people are absolutely obsessed with making like a Microsoft game theory PlayStation effect. Okay, so now what we're going to do is bring in the Bobby Jindal girl. Come in with the good kind, Lee Goodkind's house. And she will set it up to take him home. And she won't tell him about the marriage that was arranged to make it easy for her husband to work in nuclear sciences. And they will have nuptials. CMU will watch and say it was legal, but it wasn't pretty. And they will get on Radio KKK with Jaime Carbonell's tapes and start blowing up things around the world. Hot-wired to George Bush's Walrus from the San Jacinto, and then to say, now who's nonviolence, dog eyes? You're not nonviolence because we're detonating things to you. Your very existence is an affront to the kingdom of heaven. And this is how they operated. Hook, line, and sinker, everybody took it in. They said neat. It isn't neat. It's psychotic Holy Ghost activity from Casper the Friendly Fascist on high, being underwritten by an NAACP that doesn't realize that nonviolence is the root of law enforcement. They hate law because law would make Jimmy a victim. They say we can't have that because the union wants the charity activities from the sex from Warhol. We have people here who are suffering. We're entitled to stick it in and suck on someone who they tortured. That's what and Donald Trump sees nonviolence as a joke, and this is the living joke of his idea of nonviolence as a joke. Go ahead, be nonviolent. We're gonna torture you to death. We're gonna rape and kill everything you love. Be nonviolent. It's happily ever after for them because you're nonviolent. And law enforcement has closed the door and locked it. If you get that to lock, and where you can do that publicly, report that publicly, and everybody laugh at you, it's total humiliation. It's a laugh on the entire American system of government, in fact. There's no right of a person with AIDS to say, we blame an innocent person and we're going to take everything they have because Yoko Ono says it's the only way to prove that he's nonviolent. It's a joke. It's set up as a malicious gesture. And these people themselves are supposedly prosecuting because the person wanted to get married. See, that's one of the slippery things about it is that the fact that the person wanted to get married means that he is the enemy now because all of this pro-Christian behavior was terroristic towards the victims. Therefore, if this person wanted to be married, he is an aggressor against the logic of the victim chain. Right? So again, you see the whole thing is this grand hookendemic of justification for keeping people in the dark and making them slaves of the weirdest crime and the weirdest minds in the history of fascism. Lording over Axis America. And what did they say? I am paranoid. They implant in neuroplasm and call it genetic schizophrenia. Isn't that cute? The history of nonviolence has to do now with the destruction of access to the courts. It's rational to believe in law enforcement. If something they say, well, we're going to go through hundreds and hundreds and millions of little details and say that Jimmy could have talked about it. Everywhere I turned and every time I turned, I hit up against this wall. Jimmy did talk about it. They are the ones who refused to address it. Why? Because they didn't want to. They wanted it to spread and sort of normalize so they could get their mystique and control, and that was there all along. The Green Party was there as a web. It was a fascist union. Trump operated from above and below to capture the globe and lock it in for Bill Gates' holy crusade to save the planet. From who? From them. What else? You want to save the planet from us, you'll cooperate. That's the basic root of it. So all I'm doing is talking about the roots of the treachery lying in the inability of people who are black warmongers to comprehend nonviolence and the rights of another person, because I was terribly victimized. And the issue of people who got AIDS being victimized is separate. And they say it's not. Psychologically, it's the same. They get somebody who says, oh, he wants us to be nonviolent. He believes in nonviolence, right? I want them to be law-abiding, to do sought action, and warn people. They didn't want to do that. They say it's a joke on me because I have AIDS and my body's falling apart, so I'm going to poison them out. And so the joke's on him. It's criminally insane, and yet it comes from the structure of the recovery program itself. They have a slogan: our gamer son wasted your honest stew. You're not nonviolent until we inject you and you say peace. Okay, so that's their bottom line. And there was this guy who murdered someone named DT back when DT came out and started Survival Black. And he would give me the finger and give me the finger and give me the finger and give me the finger. And when I was stupid enough to give it back, he came and was slaughtering blows. Okay, that's their idea of social progress. Kicking the notebooks so that the pages fly everywhere. Ha 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 ha, the joke's on you. The bottom line is that the Gurdjieff Society, who put this up, who locked me in a shack and gave me no choice but to obey them, who gave me a neuroplasm and said, we're going to detonate it, and then say, the way that we treated you was for your own good. The Gurdjieff Society comes from King Crimson, who set this whole thing up, has never cared about our public schools. They've never cared about our patients in hospitals. They've never cared about anything but themselves and Donald Trump. They don't care about our municipal authorities. They operate out of the synods, ha 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 ha. And they make weapons and they make weapons and they make weapons and they make weapons, and then they talk about the little people's anti-Christian behavior because they go out and smooch behind the backs of their parents. I mean, it's so criminal and it's so horrifying and so destructive to any kind of norms that nobody is willing to talk about it. Nope, nope, nope. We won't talk about that because we're afraid they're going to blow up the mountain. You know, the bottom line is that there are people all over this country who have the authority to make sure they don't blow up the mountain. What has frozen them is their absolute panic that the entire thing will come apart and you'll see nonviolence as legal authority. That all it is the right to question, the right to testify, the right to have consenting affairs between people, okay? And what they want is a Microsoft panopticon where they look at you through your home. They look at you through your apps. They look at you through your PlayStation and they make sure that you're not making out with somebody's girlfriend, okay? And they had it all set up to just decide. They played a game, you know. Paul McCartney was the brains behind this. We'll set Jimmy up with a girl and then have her go out with his best friend and watch him cry. And that proves he's not he doesn't believe in liberty. And they did this over and over again. That was their routine. That was their routine. Set him, watch him cry, and say he's not liberty. So, and that's the way they operated. The whole thing. It's a complex of show business bullshit hookahnomics.